Good evening, this is a foreigner in the Philippines. Welcome. Well, what was I going to talk about? I was going to talk about words, and the words that we've lost to normal use. Like, we're not allowed to say certain words now because they're politically incorrect, or they just describe something that you're not allowed to describe because. And I'm not going to do any of the 13 words that George Carlin said, all of those outrageous words. I'm just going to talk about the ordinary words that have become something else. Like Michael Jackson. At one time, if somebody said, "You're bad," you said, "Sorry about that." Like, was it Abbott and Costello who used to say, "I'm a bad, bad boy"? Well, they don't do that anymore. Michael Jackson got up there and he made bad look good. So a lot of the time you just get a little bit confused about what is bad good now, or is good bad. Is cool still in? I mean, or do you have to say it with a K? I mean, now you can't say. At one time there was a very popular. It was a kind of a monologue type word, which was possibly regarded as the precursor of rap, because it was almost spoken by a man called Stanley Holloway. I listened to the entire song today. It was a long song, but the basis of it was that how you look really varies according to the person who's looking at you. They may perceive that you look terrible, and yet you feel very good, and then suddenly everything changes. Now you feel bad, like you're going to die or whatever, and it's not how you feel. So words are very, very powerful. Stanley Holloway used to say, "My word, you do look queer. My word, you do look queer," as if you were dying. And he would say, "I better say goodbye. I better say goodbye to you now because you might not be here next week. My word, you do look queer." So we lost queer, didn't we? I can't look at you and say, "My word, you do look queer," thinking that you don't look well. I can't look at you like that, can I? I can't. If you're a smoker, you can't ask me, "Have you got a fag?" That's British. In my dad's day, a fag was a cigarette. You could ask somebody for a fag. Have you got a fag? Well, nowadays you wouldn't do that. I mean, it's a very nasty word to call somebody a fag. Now they talk about the closet. Is he in the closet? And you're not allowed to say that now. Who was it? One of the presidents said, don't ask, I won't tell. Don't ask me if I'm gay. There's another word that we've lost. I used to be able to say, well, who was it? Wasn't it the Flintstones? They used to have a gay old time. We're gonna have a gay old time. And now you can't do that anymore because it means that you're going to be flaunting around the place in a wig, or putting eyelashes on or something, or lipstick, or wearing a dress when you're not supposed to wear a dress, when you're supposed to be a fella and you're supposed to be butch. There's another one that you're not allowed to use, butch. Now you can't say butch. At one time you were allowed to say something like that. In fact, there were lots of English expressions, like in the theatre, my dear, you would say camp. I say, "He's awfully camp, isn't he?" And I remember my friends looking at someone that they suspected of being in the closet, but they're not fooling anybody, and they'd say, "Oh yes, that one's as butch as a meat pie." Or they'd say, "Oh yes, my dear, camp is a row of tents." Meaning he was, nowadays, gay. Now, you're not allowed to say queer because that's a derogatory term. It's a derogatory term, my dear. So, what else? When we were out the other day, I saw a sign. Well, it was a few weeks ago, we went to see the Chocolate Hills. And on the way to the Chocolate Hills, it warned you, humps ahead. Well, that turned out to be a false promise that was never met. But then I'm British, and if you're an American anyway, if you say, "Did you have a hump today?" Well, that would be sexual, which we can't go into here, all right. So you would say, no, don't say that word, humping. Now, in England, I've just remembered, you could say, "Can you help me hump this upstairs?" And that would mean you had a suitcase that you needed some help with. You'd have to hump it upstairs, meaning carry it. See, the words are all changing and it's difficult to keep up with them. What's another one? Well, when there was one particular actor, and he was giving a speech which was designed to motivate the American forces in their fight against evil, against the Nazis and everything. And he was giving a speech in a girls' school in America, a private school for girls, for young ladies. And he said, "Well, don't forget, keep your pecker up." And everybody goes, "Oh my gosh, what did he say?" Well, the thing is, keeping your pecker up, it's quite acceptable to say, "Yeah, well, you know, don't get too brought down, keep your pecker up, son," which means stay cheerful. But you're not allowed to say that in America, because pecker means one of your bits and pieces, you know, your meat and two veg down there. You're not allowed to say pecker. So what can you say? Well, you've got to be careful, because sometimes one word means something totally different, as I said, in another country. Now, you don't say pecker in the Philippines, you say titi. Well, it seems so much nicer, doesn't it, to say to a little boy, "Put your pants on, your titi's showing," and it doesn't seem so bad. But what about the words that cannot translate? Like, you're not allowed to say pussy. Well, I said it, didn't I? You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to say pussy because it's sexual innuendo. Well, everybody's got one, the same as they've. Well, not everybody, of course. I haven't got a pussy, but and I'm getting very personal here. I do have a pecker. Anyway, then you have Americans who don't know anything about other languages, and they make a comedy program, or like a common interest, human interest comedy program, which actually I used to really like watching. And it was about a young kid who was a little girl, I don't know, I think she was about 7 or 8, and cutest little thing ever, and very funny, and she's given a home by this aged janitor or something, and he ends up just fostering her. But her name and the name of the show was Pookie Brewster, Pookie, and my then Filipino wife said, "Pookie." Oh, what does it mean? Well, it means pussy. So you've got to be very careful about what you're actually saying. My parents, when they went out for a drink at the weekend, they used to go to a pub called the Black Boy. Oh, can you imagine? Can you imagine calling a pub or a bar in America the Black Boy? You just couldn't do it. I mean, the whole racial thing is so heavily loaded now. It's very difficult on both sides. The mother of a friend of mine, who everybody used to call Nan, was talking about how at one time, deep in Pennsylvania, in the farming community, there was a knock at the door, and a young man came round, and he was selling. I think he was a Jehovah's Witness or something like that, and he's peddling his own particular kind of belief. And of course, he's a handsome young black man, very nicely dressed and well spoken and everything. And she said, "Well, can you come in, because I'm on the phone?" And anyway, she's on the phone and talking, and her dog keeps pestering her and jumping up, and in the end she says, "Sit down, Blackie." And the young man sat down. And after that, she said she's felt so embarrassed that she said no young black man had ever been treated so well. I fed him and made him coffee and chatted to him and listening to his whole thing because I felt so guilty. It's one of those things. Now, when I was a musician, one of the expressions that we had, that we used, that sounds so outdated and silly now, well, I am outdated and silly, aren't I? And that was swinging. And if piece of music was really in the beat and really going, you'd say, wow, that's swinging. And then they stole that word as well. And if you went in for swapping your wife with somebody else, they called you a swinger. Well, so, I don't know, it's a confusing world, isn't it? And I've probably gone on too much now, because meandering, I don't know. I think we still own meandering, so we're okay for the moment. Thanks for listening to me. It's all in the words. Words are very powerful. So the next time somebody says to you, "My word, you do look queer. My word, you do look queer," don't take any notice of them. I think you look wonderful. Bye for now.